Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday. No, it isn't. It is. It's Thursday, November 19th, but not for you. It is for me. And I'm doing the thing that I almost got to the point where I promised myself I wouldn't do, recording a Friday show. But gosh, there's a lot happening, and boy, there's a lot to say about it. So, for you and me going forward from this point, it is Friday, November 20th, 2020. There is some numerological significance. Go out and do something. You might as well just go ahead and, well, you know what? Put your life savings into it. Just liquidate the house, buy some lottery tickets, cross your fingers that the lottery will actually draw and pay off, and that money will be worth something and the U.S. dollar stays stable, and live it up in the future. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but I did feel like I wanted to record something today, and another great opportunity presents itself. It would be a great idea if it actually prevented itself as well. Armando. Armando finds himself free and highly agitated this afternoon, which for you is morning. And I figured that would make a good way of handling a significant portion, or perhaps all of this show, as I think both of us are just sitting here restless and worried, watching what's developing in the news as Trump and his team get crazier and crazier. Again, I wouldn't say that you need to, don't actually panic. Don't actually liquidate your assets at this point. But do enter into this clear-eyed. They are going to try some very, very strange things, and the normal rules will not apply. And so far, every time someone has assured me that this can't go any further, or in particular, I guess what's really got me worried or annoyed more than anything else is having been told, well, look, there are all these fantasies that the Trump camp has about, and now it's moved on to the Michigan state legislature. This is what we were initially told about the Pennsylvania state legislature, too. There's no interest in interfering in the election. There's not even an opportunity to do it. State law prevents the legislature from assigning a new slate of electors and overriding the results of the popular vote in the state or the Commonwealth, as the case may be. And therefore, there's no interest in it. We are the Republican leadership of that body, and we're telling you that we have no interest in it. And as you know, when the leadership of a body, the legislative body, tells you that's not coming to the floor, you can usually count on it. But these are Republicans, and they continue to want to try to do these things. So the latest development that's got me agitated anyway is that the Michigan state legislators also assured everybody that there was no interest in intervening and assigning some, or naming a different slate of electors, only to find out later on that, well, as it turns out, Donald Trump has invited the Republican leadership of the state legislature to the White House to come and discuss the possibility of doing just that. And they have accepted that invitation and are flying to Washington to do it. So all the hedging that I worried about, that Armando worried about, saying, yes, they keep saying there's no interest now, but they don't foreclose the possibility of there being an interest in doing it in the future. And now the future is now. And there they go. They're flying to Washington, and I don't know what to tell you. Now, it could be that they're just going for the free hamburgers. They just maybe want the frequent flyer miles. I'm not really certain why they're doing it, why they're going, but the fact is that they are, and that's rather disturbing. And this, by the way, also comes on the heels of new information about those crazy idiots who decided that they were going to try to kidnap the governor of Michigan and execute her after a brief show trial, I'm sure. And as it turns out, their plot was more elaborate than we first thought. So anyway, let's let Armando in the door here, because really, there's no way I can. I figured there's about 15 hours worth of material to go over in 2 hours, but I felt like I would trip myself up doing this entirely alone. And of course, as I told everybody, I could see you're ranting on Twitter right now, Armando, and I thought you might want the chance to talk some of this out. This is I don't know what to tell you. I guess that's it. And maybe, again, I don't endorse the don't panic posture. I'm just saying I don't want you, vomiting over this. But
look, I mean, it's.
Well, don't panic. Just don't be complacent.
There's a 1% chance of this happening. I do wish that before I came on with you, Georgia had announced the results of its hand recount. Because that would have made me feel better because they're certifying tomorrow. And at that point, Trump would have to sweep. Well, I mean, depends on how you count Wisconsin. I mean, the recount isn't going to reverse anything. And I don't think there's anything else to do there. So I think Wisconsin's basically in the bag. So he'd have to sweep Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. And Arizona was given no indication at all. So I don't want to be unduly alarmist because the reality is it's a 1% chance, but it's a 1% chance of the destruction of our democracy. So
that used to be good enough for Dick Cheney.
About the fact is there 1% chance that could happen.
Yes. Dick Cheney told you to worry about that. We all learned it from him, the 1% doctrine. And, I didn't believe in it then, but I know this. There's still a number of places where they can cause enough mischief that I don't know why anybody would give in to this, but what keeps coming back to my head is I'm watching how much the Republicans are doing and how far elected Republicans are willing to go either in excusing this or actually playing along with it. I'm thinking back to 2000. After the recount in Florida and all of the objections made there, and how difficult it was. Impossible. The Democrats who objected to the electoral vote count in the joint session on January 6th could not get a single senator to even say, you know what, there might have been a problem. So they just refused. They wouldn't be associated with it. They had been talked down and talked out of it, of course, by Al Gore, and they wanted, I guess, to respect his wishes. But it irks me so to think that Democrats, when they've been in a situation where there was a legitimate gripe, just wouldn't do it. And I guess it worries me a little bit too, that what happens if one of these stupid 1% come through and lots of people say, well, that would be it. People would be in the streets. The Democrats would never stand for it. And, even so, Brian Beutler, who's been on the right side of this the whole time and saying, but that wouldn't fly. And I had to, answer, or alternatively, it would.
I mean, okay, now I can scare you a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Let me give you one scary scenario because, according to Hoyle laws, including the Electoral College Count Act or whatever it's called, 3 USC 1 through 20.
Okay.
And I've talked about it a lot. And maybe, people could, I'm surprised nobody threw it in my face, which is, 3 USC 5, there's a safe harbor. If the state submits its certified slate of electors before December 8th, Congress can't even challenge them. Why didn't somebody say back to me, listen, you're talking about all this laws. What if Republicans say, I don't care what 3 USC 5 says.
Right.
I'm going to challenge it.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I didn't put that together when we were talking about it. But, yeah, I mean, it says you're not, you can't. But what if I open my mouth?
It says they cannot. It is not subject to objection. Well, who's going to say? Mike Pence is going to say, well, you're right. 3 USC 5 says blah, blah, blah.
Can't help you.
Yeah, because there definitely will be a crazy Republican senator and, 100 crazy Republican House members who will say, I don't care about 3 USC 5.
Right.
Screw that.
Yeah, sue me.
Yeah, sue me. Who am I going to sue and where? Okay. Oh, well, that's a political question. So.
Right.
And of course, that's through the looking glass, and that's a coup d'etat. And that's the destruction of democracy is what it is. And again, I think it's a 1% chance, but it's just not acceptable that it is. But here's the thing. Trump is basically trying a coup, and most Republicans are hoping somebody else stops it. I actually think at least half of them want him stopped, but they're afraid to do it themselves, right? You stop him. I said, I'll hold your coat while you stop.
If it comes to that, yeah, exactly. Then I'll be behind you 100%.
Yeah, I'll hold your coat while you stop him. Now, there's still one of the most remarkable things because I was so suspicious of this guy at the beginning of the process. Raffensperger, the Secretary of State from Georgia.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
I thought he was going to sell us out for sure.
No real reason
really
not to think that.
I thought that guy's gone. And I said, phew, at least we don't really need Georgia. We got Michigan and we got Pennsylvania and we got Arizona, so we'll be okay. In fact, I'm sure I tweeted not 5 days ago that I think they're going to steal Georgia from us. And now Georgia's my rock, except I'm waiting for the freaking recount number.
Okay.
But that guy, that actually makes it incredibly hard, and it's important that stick because, I don't have any trust in these Michigan guys. I think the Michigan law is such that it probably will hold up, but I could see them sending a competing slate to Congress, putting together a session afterwards, and we designate Trump the winner of Michigan and sending it in the mail, and Louis DeJoy will deliver it himself, making sure it gets there.
Could be, right? It's supposed to go registered mail. I do remind everybody that it does. Yeah, the same section of the code that tells us how the electoral count. Well, the electoral college meets on the what is it? 20th? I don't know. They meet.
It
they
meets
vote
on the 14th.
14th. Okay.
Of December, but the slate of electors has to be notified by December 8th.
Yes. Who was supposed to show up to vote? Well, when they vote, the actual meetings, multiple,
is on the 14th.
Yeah.
Yes.
They meet in their respective state
capitals,
right, and D.C. of course, and they go through the motions. I've observed it. They vote. They craft up some certificates, and everybody signs them. But yeah, they're directed by statute to send it to the president of the Senate. That's Pence. Via registered mail, via the U.S. Postal Service. I've already wondered.
Pence is not going to accept the letter,
right? Yeah, or just DeJoy says, I don't know what happened to him. All the Biden ones got lost.
I mean, look, we're making a joke, and yet you think it's impossible that Rudy Giuliani wouldn't say they didn't get there on time.
That's right. Yeah,
of course he would.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's 10 other places that they can do it. Not only will there be, could they send other slates of electors? I guess I should just save this for later. But I've been thinking all day about going through the ceremonial, usually counting of those electoral votes. I remember how if you saw Fahrenheit 9/11, maybe it burned in your memory. If you're too young to have seen that or too smart to have sat through that more than once. But I've seen the counting done, on C-SPAN. I'm familiar with it. I'm a procedure guy. And the envelopes come in, they're opened, the parliamentarian examines them and hands them to Pence, and Pence says good, and he gives them, then they go to the tellers. So there's 2 Republican tellers and 2 Democratic tellers, one from the House, one from the Senate. And, it's a little job. It's a nice thing to do. They get them and they get a little speech and they say, Mr. President, the certificate of the state of Alabama appears to be regular in form and authentic. That being the case, Alabama's whatever electoral votes are cast for Donald John Trump of, in this case, I guess now Florida, for president, and Mike Pence of Indiana for vice president. And, sometimes there's some rumbling, sometimes applause for the first one, whatever. They go on. All the first Republican teller has to do and say, hey, Mr. President, this does not appear to be regular in form and authentic. What the hell are you talking about? Who are you to say that? I'm the teller.
The teller.
What makes you say that it's not regular in form? Well, I don't know. Hugo Chavez wrote it.
It doesn't say Donald Trump on it.
Yeah, right. It's signed Hugo Chavez.
Hugo Chavez.
I can't. I don't know.
Oh,
That happened. There was, that not my thing, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody else has, I'm sure, seen the video by now of, isn't that Mike Flynn's lawyer? So
it is.
that's
Sidney
good.
Powell.
And she got up there and said, gave a whole speech about how the whole thing's been rigged because the voting machines, the software on the voting machines was designed by, for Hugo Chavez. And, I don't know what everyone should know, but he's dead since 2013, but, he totally designed this thing now 7 years ago in order to F up the American election later on for the guy he didn't know was going to be president. Remember who he thought was the devil was George W. Bush. He had no idea that Donald Trump was coming. And he designed the thing, and that somehow, by the way, their star witness, I'm going further and further afield here, but their star witness is the guy who, I guess, sat in with Chavez on the demo of the software, which, by the way, 7-year-old software, is probably just a bad bet in general, for anything. But
I'm actually fairly certain they probably have new software by now, but that's just me.
But they said that it was designed for him, and that this guy who sat in, I don't know who in the world would Hugo Chavez invite to watch the demo of world-conquering elections interference software, who would then, in the course of 7 years, end up saying, you know who's my guy? Donald Trump. I'm switching. I've gone this far with Hugo Chavez, but boy, do I love Trump.
I know who it could have been. Glenn Greenwald.
Oh, that's a possibility. All right. Well, I thought that there was a null universe, and it's not. It could be Glenn. South American.
The Chavez Trump guy is definitely Glenn Greenwald.
I guess.
But the thing is, obviously, nothing. This isn't even a good. You remember Bush v. Gore? They'd argue about this and argue about that and punch hole, whatever. That was legitimately. You fight hard. The big problem I had was the United States Supreme Court got involved. They should have let the recount run.
Yeah.
And not gotten involved.
Then
their
different
decisions
result.
are nonsense. The Blacker stuff is nonsense. It's terrible. And they were afraid Bush was going to lose the statewide recount, so they stopped it. And that was egregious, but it was the Supreme Court. The arguments were within, you shouldn't count this ballot or you should count that ballot and this or that.
Because of the way they're marked or anything. Yeah.
Right.
That made some sense.
I think it would have been perfectly legitimate for a senator to object to the slate of electors from Florida and hash it out and say, you know what? We, the Congress, think that this should go back to Florida and they should finish counting and overturn the Supreme Court. Of course, we didn't. I don't think we didn't have the House then, and I think it was at best 50-50 in the Senate, so we would have never won those votes anyway. So,
yes, likely,
and if you go further,
right.
if you say that the slate of electors wasn't properly chosen on the election day, what I've been talking about on Twitter, there's 3 USC 2, then it would have been proper for the Florida state legislature to designate a slate of electors that was designated Bush, and then it would have been what it had been. It was a close election. It was 500 votes out of 6 million votes. It was legitimately. I think Gore won after they did all the recounts, but he won by 400 votes out of 6 million. It really was one of those hardball things that everybody did their best. Gore could have played a little bit more, but at the end of the day, I think they would have beaten us through the different legal mechanics. I don't agree with the people who voted against seating the Ohio slate of electors in 2004. I know 31 Democrats in the House did. That was, in my opinion, wrong of them. No senator joined them, so there was no challenge that they had to divide in the joint session. This is just, this is a coup. He didn't lose by 500 votes in Michigan. He lost by 150,000. He didn't lose by 500 votes in Pennsylvania. He lost by 87,000.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he lost.
Much different, obviously.
And it wasn't particularly close.
Yeah, and there's no allegation that there's been a misunderstanding of the voters' intent or anything like that.
There's nothing like that. There's not even a legal issue.
Look,
every time they walk into court, they're arguing, wait, you're saying what? These 500 votes, something. I read this crazy Michigan case. It was in the state court in Michigan with the crazy affidavits where the people didn't know the rules. We didn't get to check the signatures on the absentee ballots. Well, If you had read the Michigan law, that was done before they were brought here because that's what the law required. If we hadn't done it like that, we would have been violating the Michigan law, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It was and then you go to the crazy case in Pennsylvania with Rudy's first performance.
Right.
Rudy doesn't even know the standard for an equal protection claim.
Right.
Normal standard.
The regular one.
Normal scrutiny.
Whatever you got, Judge.
That was embarrassing. That literally was embarrassing. Anybody who's ever gone to law school and took constitutional law in your first year in law school, they teach you about strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and rational basis.
Right.
Those
are your choices for your standard of review, essentially.
Yeah, he just did not know. It was an embarrassment, but they don't have anything to say. Oh, there was, what was he saying today? People came from Camden to vote in Philadelphia. Come on.
I did see that. He said it happens all the time. I'm not even certain what makes him think that or why anybody would do that, but I'm certain that there are people that go to the wrong precinct. I don't know about saying, no
one from Camden goes to vote in Philadelphia. Why would look? Have there been in the past, not just in Philadelphia, Miami, Republicans in North Carolina, there have been voting fraud schemes. And as you recall, David, the one in North Carolina where they threw out the election was the Republican candidate taking people's absentee ballots and filling them out for them.
Yes.
That's illegal.
Yeah. It is. That's about as egregious as it gets.
That's systematic fraud. That's what that is. That didn't happen in Philadelphia.
No. Well, nothing of the sort.
Didn't.
The only fraud that they're finding is that there occasionally are Republicans.
People try to vote. Try to vote twice.
Right. They heard and guess what? Allegedly the president of the United States, that is to say, the guy who alleges he's president, told them to do it. And everybody was like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. But there's no consequences for this guy. Everybody, if he ever did shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, they'd be like, oh man, that Trump, Well,
just consider this. Let's assume it goes well and Joe Biden becomes the president on January 20th.
Sure.
And Donald Trump decides to run for the nomination in 2024. No one's going to run against him. He'll be the nominee again. I
don't know who
would. A guy who
John
attempted a coup will be nominated.
Yeah. True. And then I guess that's the end of it. We will spend 4 years.
David, if he goes to jail and he's in Rikers Island, they're going to nominate him and he'll run from jail.
He might. I wonder if they would keep him there in Rikers Island. He would finally, he'd worm his, he'd be released for fear of coronavirus, which would be ironic.
That's true. You get convicted, they'd have to let him out.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying.
Maybe that's the plan. That's why he let it run rampant.
I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think if he was convicted and went to jail, they'd still nominate him.
That certainly could be the case. And just thinking about that, maybe the most, it's certainly outlandish, but talk about it, your serious dangers to democracy. We would have spent 4 years mopping our brow and saying, shoot, we really dodged a bullet on that one. Imagine if, he had gotten judges to validate this thing. And then, of course, if he runs and wins the nomination and then runs, I guess if he wins the presidency, does he not then go and say, I told you everything I was doing was legal the first time. Now I'm going to codify it. This is the way it works. And I might as well write it just outright. This is the way it works for me and nobody else. And I'm putting it in the legislative language. It's going to say that. This only works for Donald Trump and any designee of Donald Trump. So when Ivanka or Don Jr. wants to do it. it will work just fine. I don't know.
Hey, but David, you're joking, but that is the essence of fascism. That is the essence of fascism. The law doesn't apply to me, and in fact, it really doesn't apply to you, because if you think you have legal rights, you're wrong. I will take them from you because I decide everything.
Yes. Not only do you have no rights, but if you tried to analogize your rights to mine, I would tell you, no, that's not true. That only works for me, because I'm me and you're you.
Right. And I can put you in jail even if you think you have rights. I don't need an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to jail.
Yes.
That's fascism. And, everyone got mad and everybody's, we have been like this for 4 years.
Don't compare
It's funny that the GSA now at the end of hopefully the end of the Trump term is again corrupt with regard to Donald Trump, with the ascertainment of the apparent winner. Remember how we started your show way back when? It was the freaking hotel lease.
Yes, the same person.
Right. I don't know what's going on at the GSA. I thought there was supposed to be career people, and obviously they're not.
Yeah.
Little did I know.
I should have
paid more attention.
I guess so. I mean, there was reason to believe that they might have acted as, responsible career people at the beginning, I guess. But I certainly that hotel decision was a clear signal. The lease says it can't be a government employee. There's no more governmental employee type person out there than the president. And the decision was, in fact, the opposite. He's not a government employee. Everything's fine. And I guess that was foreshadowing. Anyway, let's take a short break and come right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Nice break built in for us to regroup and think about these things. By the way, I looked it up while we were talking. 3 U.S. Code Section 11 is disposition of certificates, is where the instructions are to the certificate shall be forwarded forthwith, by the way, by registered mail to the President of the Senate. There's there's like 4 or 5 sets of these things. One goes to the Secretary of the Senate, one goes to the Archivist of the United States, one goes to the governor of the state, and so they go all over the place.
Not for nothing. Shouldn't they update that law and make it just be by messenger or FedEx?
Right, or fax it if necessary,
right.
Scan it in PDF, whatever. I guess they could come up with a different. And so when was this revised? 1948. Oh, no, I guess the last revision would have been 84. I don't know what they did to it, but so.
As long as they were revising, maybe they could have updated the delivery system.
Sure. FedEx might be okay. I don't know if you want to make it a quasi-governmental thing, but so just I happen to realize.
Or at least give the option of being able to deliver it in person or something.
Right,
in
case the Postmaster General is a felon. You don't want to. But there's a thing that was definitely drafted with the, maybe we should have another option. Why? What if the Postmaster General? Oh my God! Can you imagine in 1948? What if it was a secret? What if it was a secret Nazi and he escaped from Germany and he's our Postmaster General now? Come on, get out of here. Well, it could be Italian. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's a possibility.
Yeah, the founders really screwed up, and everybody who thought of all these other, norms don't work. No more with the norms. But
yeah. Well, there's always shaky foundations for everything, I guess. Somebody did make
I do think it's funny, I suppose they could now that Trump wants all paper ballots. I suppose, the problem for imposing that on a presidential, of course, is the Article 2, Section 1. The state legislature prescribes the manner in which the electors are chosen. You can't make them use paper ballots.
No. So there you go. Freedom. I guess. Yeah, I mean, that's true, although lots of states are considering that.
What's his name made up this stupid rule, so, and now they all agree.
Right. Well, or, he could find a way around it and say, well, your election assistance, your formula will get a reduction.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. Because I'm watching the TV with the mute on.
Yes.
And it says Obama, quote, troubled by attempts to overturn election results. He's troubled.
That's good. He's he can get together with Susan Collins.
He's concerned.
Yes.
Him and Susan Collins are both concerned.
She's lost her concern.
Don't say troubled. You got to talk like what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway.
Right.
Maybe Obama doesn't get to do that. I don't know.
I guess he gets to do whatever he wants, really. But yeah. All right. He could speak out a little bit, but
a little more forcefully. It says, "Listen, look. I mean, this is a threat to democracy. He is trying to overturn the results of an election, and that's just
that is bad."
Beyond anything that's ever happened in the history of our country, besides secession, I guess it's comparable to secession, I suppose. Though, I mean, back then, arguably, maybe there was no case law that said you couldn't secede. I guess there never was.
True. Right.
Afterwards, there was a war. Lincoln said, "No, you can't."
Right. Prove it.
And the war of the Northern Aggression began.
Yeah. We were just trying to prove a point. That's all. And
right.
And the point was
slavery.
You Southerners did not deliver your certificates of secession correctly. It was supposed to be sent by the U.S. mail, and you sent it by, Pony Express, and that's a no, and so war it is. I don't know. I did see somebody commenting today about as you were saying, I can't recall now, even it's like 2 minutes ago, but just the idea of, the founders, getting it wrong. Somebody was discussing, I want you to follow me on this one. Just entertain for a second the idea that the Federalist Papers, upon which, so many of our legal arguments that are enshrined in landmark cases throughout constitutional law, the Federalist Papers are essentially, really, honestly, at the time, before the Constitution is adopted and it's still up in the air, now it's this great event. But at the time, that was crackpot letters to the editor from anonymous weirdos that were just trying to gloss over the dumbest contradictions that had somehow accidentally made it into the draft of the Constitution.
Well, the 11th and the 12th Amendments were basically within the first 20 years of the country, because the framers screwed up, according to people.
Yeah.
Why can't we say they screwed? Look, they screwed the whole vice president thing up completely. The electoral
they found that out very quickly.
Complete disaster.
Yeah. They learned that very quickly. The actual founders were involved in the first electoral college controversy. It didn't take 10 years before they were like, oh my God.
It was the first election where Washington wasn't on the ballot. They had a huge electoral college problem.
What are we going to do? They did. They made that mistake. They were, you say the 11th and 12th Amendment, the Bill of Rights, the whole first 10 amendments were like, that was a sop to somebody. Well, we should be guaranteeing this stuff. It's inherent in all of this.
Yes,
don't worry about it.
That was Madison's argument. You don't really need the first amendment.
All right. Calm down. We'll write it down and put it in there. And now everybody, our sacred, First Amendment, Second Amendment. No one ever says the Third Amendment is sacred, but
the sacred Third Amendment.
That could come up.
The 10th Amendment became sacred.
Oh, yes.
Years later.
Right. The afterthought amendment. We have 9. Shouldn't we?
Ted, anything we don't say here is reserved to the people and the states.
Yeah.
Oh, but that amendment really is important to understanding the dual federal state. What are you talking about?
Right.
It was just thrown in.
Yeah. Although, yeah, one time I had a theory on that about they got to 9 and figured we'll make it 10. Or really, I think they get to 8. And then they're like, well, we should also, and then throw in 9 and 10. But as it turns out, I guess historically they circulated a package of 12. And the 11th and 12th, I guess, were separated out. They said, we'll do these 10.
Well,
and then
they
were
flew
like,
in the 9th just to have penumbras.
we should go back and include those other ones. Give me those penumbras back over here.
The 9th literally is the penumbra statue. It's the penumbra one. That's the only use it has.
Yeah, I guess that's the only time it came up.
It underpins Griswold.
Still waiting for the Third Amendment to show up.
The third.
The least litigated of our Bill of Rights.
They were smart guys. They did amazing things.
Yes,
but they screwed up a ton of stuff. Okay, it's not blasphemous to say they screwed up a ton of stuff.
No, there are a lot of. I think that they were clear about that. They wrote it in it was designed in the fashion it was designed, or I guess I should say wordsmithed in that fashion, because they knew they couldn't possibly cover everything. And so even for I guess this brings us to a stupid conversation about originalism. Originally they didn't know what the hell was going to happen. So they said, general principles of government. And, you people are sensible, I'm sure. You'll figure it out.
Hey, Ben Franklin said, what, a republic if you could keep it. So he said, listen, we can't.
And he thought we might not.
We can't make sure that you're not going to screw it up. I mean, there's nothing we can write here that's going to cover everything. Ben Franklin probably thinking now, look, I told you guys you might get a Trump. You needed to be hard on him. Mm. It's not my fault. Don't blame us. You guys screwed it up.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've been thinking about that since the first time around, when people were saying maybe we can get some faithless electors to not vote Trump.
God.
And I think, just thinking back to 8th grade or whenever we learned, okay, so what is our system of electing a president? And why do we have this electoral college thing? And my teachers told me, well, that was in case, that was because they didn't trust the people to vote directly in case there was a wacko demagogue. There was going to be this serious, college of electors who would say, no, that's just no good for our country.
Well, they called them Hamilton electors for a reason, because that was the nonsense Hamilton wrote in that loony letter to the editor that he wouldn't put his name to.
What are you hiding?
That's what
someone should shoot that guy.
That is the source of all that, right? That's why they taught you that.
Yeah.
That was everybody's argument. That's what the Hamilton electors. And, we can't have a crazy loon be president.
That obviously fell through. That was not the purpose of it. And things have evolved over time, and I can understand why on that. But between that and the other argument of, it'll make people go to the small states. And I have not seen that work yet either.
Nobody goes to the small states. They go to the competitive states. That's always going to be the case, right. Because
they skip the small states because of the electoral college, because there's no point. 3 electoral votes. I'm not going there.
I mean, nobody goes to Wyoming. Nobody goes to Idaho. Idaho's not small in terms of its size, but its population, right. Or the Dakotas.
They're not big stops, but
no. I mean, you draw your maps, and they just aren't. So that argument's always been ridiculous.
Yes. Well, there's certainly plenty about it. That you shouldn't feel bad about calling out the founders.
But it's not just the small states; it's the big states. Nobody goes to New York. Nobody goes to California.
I guess they'd probably do some stops occasionally there just to swing by. But
back in the day, it just
how those states are going to come out. Although they did say that I think Trump, or the more Trump voters in California than any other state.
Anywhere else? Well, there's more people in California than anywhere else.
Wouldn't you like to get rid of that electoral college? Right. Now, your electoral college tells you ignore your biggest pool of voters. Why?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? If you had a popular vote, you'd be there rallying them. And then they'd have a civil war.
Exactly. You'd want to get every one of those voters out there voting for you, and then some. I mean, presumably, if Trump had wanted to, he could have campaigned there and gotten another, 500,000 votes or whatever. I have no idea. But the point is, they were all ignored.
Yeah. Bringing us back, I guess, to the most worrisome subject. These are all part and parcel of the
the
overarching argument.
The reason we're discussing that is because that's how we're here.
Yeah, we don't know what to do with situations like this. I saw Greg tweeting around earlier. He says, finally somebody's kind of getting their headlines right. The New York Times writing about the Michigan lawmakers. Trump asks Michigan lawmakers to White House in bid to subvert election. Like, okay, good. You've put
That's
that one correctly.
Headline. Good for them. Took them long enough.
Washington Post was less forceful, and he took them to task for that. I don't know if he's connected the two threads here. Trump invites Michigan Republican leaders to meet him as he escalates attempts to overturn election results. Yeah,
that's not terrible.
Terrible,
overturn,
but weak.
Subvert sounds better.
Yeah, I like subvert. So, I guess they've now accepted this invitation, but to me, the big story out of that is this is now the second Republican-controlled legislature that has said no. I might think about it. Yeah. In fact,
sure. Did you know how many times I've had this argument on Twitter? They would pull out some article. The guy.
He said this in
I
September.
love the Michigan. No, it's the Pennsylvania guys.
Yeah.
Who wrote an op-ed in September or October.
Yes.
I said, that's before the election. That's before Trump started yelling at them.
Right. Now we know.
The Pennsylvania guys are lucky, I believe. The fact is that as a legal matter, Pennsylvania is about as judgment-proof as you got here. So bulletproof as you got here because, as I understand it, the Secretary of State certifies the election results and the governor sends in the results.
Okay.
The legislature has literally no role in the presidential election in Pennsylvania.
Yes. Right. And
they made the rules, and that was it.
Right. As it happens, I guess that is the case. And again, the only warning I throw out on things like that is, well, okay, that's what the statute says. And now, of course, there will be people, if the Pennsylvania legislature were to say, you know what, to hell with it. Let's send a resolution purporting to name a different slate, and everybody will say, no. That's not what the Pennsylvania law says. If the slate of electors makes it to Congress and gets opened up, Louis Gohmert will stand up and say, I'm reading the Constitution right here, and it says that the state legislature, and without any of the nuance of the state legislature gets to make different rules, and they did. They opted for different rules.
Well, they can make it even prettier than Louis Gohmert, as I was explaining just before we started to people. Mm-hmm. What they can argue that pursuant to 3 U.S.C. 2, no legitimate selection of electors occurred on election day or the process that the election day because of all the fraud. Therefore, 3 U.S.C. 2 says the legislature can select them in a manner they choose afterwards.
Yeah.
That's what it says. You can read it yourself if you want. And again, we go back to it's in the law, but that actually isn't consistent with the law. And so what? I don't care. And I'm voting here in Congress. And who's going to stop me from doing what I want? Where's the court that's going to say I can't?
Right. Yeah. Once you get somebody to stand up and say it in Congress and it's not shouted down, you got a problem. And it may come out okay in the end, but I've gamed it out all the way to the end and people have gamed it out and told me.
It ends up the House picks the president and the Senate picks the vice president. If you play it all out, if everybody plays hardball, and all these things happen. So yes, you're right that if you game it to the end, you could, and everybody just ignores every law and everything except what Congress does, you'd have Biden Pence. Maybe. Though I can see Murkowski and Collins and Romney and others picking Harris. It might not happen that way. It could be that both houses would do it. But, but look, what is that telling you, though? There's something wrong here.
Yes, well, that's true. And by the way, there's also, I guess, are you keeping in mind how the House votes for president? I don't know what the outcome of the latest election is, but having lost seats in the House, it can't have helped.
Well,
but the delegations.
The idea was Pelosi would play hardball, not seat people.
Okay, well, that is fine.
That would be the end game. So she'd throw out all the Republican electeds, and she'd have enough votes to do it. And they said, nope, we're not accepting your credentials. Sorry.
That would be awesome. And by the way, while she's considering that, can I make another pitch for don't sit the QAnon weirdos? Don't seat them. They're, these are slow fused assassins. Don't put them in there. Two gun nuts who believe that you're all cannibalistic vampire pedophiles and it's their duty to kill you. I don't want to see them.
I mean, yeah, you could. I mean, as long as we're playing hardball, I said, listen, and for you, it's permanent.
Just put them on the list.
We're not going to wait for this vote.
Yeah,
we're not
at a minimum.
It's not just for a week. It's forever. Go away.
Right. Right. You might as well do that. And here, by the way, unrelated, but since the leadership elections took place this week, and there were a lot of disgruntled folks from the, the ultra progressive wing that, and others who say, oh, Pelosi's time has come and gone. If any of this has to happen, like, could you see, like, who else was challenging for the speaker's seat years ago? Nobody did it this time, but, would you put this on anybody else's shoulders and say, what was it, like Sean Maloney or something? Yeah. Right?
Seth Moulton.
Seth Moulton. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. The other
Seth
SM.
Moulton you're thinking of.
Yes. It's the initials that have got me, but, right. So Moulton, right. Yeah. You're going to be the one that says, I'm going to totally hardball this for 1 week. I'm not accepting these credentials. We're only going to seat part of the House in order to install a president. And then we might expel these other two nuts, by the way. And then after that, then really, honestly, at this point, the speaker is just going to be the target for every crazy idiot in the world.
No,
but just
really
have all
Pelosi
the heat coming down.
Do it because she's probably going to retire in 2 years anyway.
Right. Let me take the heat for that. Or, this is a good call to say this will be my last term, perhaps, for different reasons. But to say, if this has to be done, one, it has to be done precisely, and it has to be done definitively, and the person who does it can't plan to stick around.
Right.
Or the other alternative of, we can't come to any conclusion whatsoever, and the 20th rolls around, and Trump and Pence's terms expire, and succession says it's going to be Pelosi, and supposing you unseat Pelosi as Speaker of the House, triumphantly take the gavel only to be shot. I mean, it's great, you're President of the United States, but you don't get to come back and be Speaker of the House at any point. So
I think she'd take that deal, boy. Can you imagine getting to say I'm the president?
Well, right. She would take
get all those perks.
But just also in terms of, if you have to make a selection for who's going to be Speaker of the House this time around, like again, all right, President Moulton, was he ready for that? No. So
no.
You got you have this major constitutional crisis that nearly, or perhaps still, tears the country apart, and you have to go to the statute of succession and install the Speaker of the House. It can't be a first-term Speaker.
Yes.
It's not going to be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, no matter how badly you want that. It's not going to be Barbara Lee either. So
no, she just for the record, she isn't qualified to be president. And I don't mean in terms of her abilities. I mean, she's not old enough.
Is that right? She's still not. Yeah, I guess she's about 30. So, that would be problematic.
So she would be passed over.
How about that? Right? Would you be, then does it go to the Senate President
it goes to the Senate pro tempore.
You imagine? That's it. We finally succeeded in making AOC Speaker of the House. Oh, my God. Look what happened. Oh, it's just passed. Oh, Grassley is president. What a stupid idea that was. Oh, my God. But then he gets COVID and dies. Oh, my God.
Well, my understanding is they voted already and she's the speaker, right?
Yes. So by she's the nominee anyway, by acclamation.
Well, right, but we'll have 223 or 224, so she will be the speaker.
Yes, unless there's some, like last time people were saying they were going to withhold votes. This time the margin's too thin and you'll be killed. If you withhold
literally no one is even. Instead, they're protesting in front of the DNC today for some reason. I'm sorry. I understand it's important, but there is a coup going on. I don't even know why you're talking about the Green New Deal on a day when Trump is trying to overturn the election.
It is a ruse. We are positioning troops on the streets in case of a coup. And hold this sign until we call you.
Just as an aside,
Yes.
Have a little sense. You're not making any friends by doing this today. Wait till, all this is over, and you can have that same protest on January 5th or 7th or whenever, and it'll be more meaningful, and you'll get some people behind you. Doing it today, in the middle of all this, is just dumb. It's as dumb as defund the police as a slogan.
Well,
I'm sorry I don't want to get into that fight. I know we're talking about other things, but just be smart about it. Show some political sense. That's all I'm asking.
Yes. They will say, anyway. I can do it twice, so I will. We'll do it also on January 5th.
Yeah, okay, so one day to piss us off, and then another day when we'll remember how much you pissed us off the first time you did.
Yes. Well, okay. They're supposed to make us uncomfortable.
I'm just saying it's not smart from their perspective.
That's okay. We're not paying any attention to it. So, although we could. But yeah, look, I'm sympathetic, and you can't. This would be a hard group to tell them that's not going to work, and they'll say, "Don't tell me what's going to work. Look where we are." And
exactly. Look at
you're
me.
right. You have me.
I toppled Joe Crowley. Okay,
yeah, you got
Congratulations.
Me. Right. So okay. So that wouldn't. It's not my priority at the moment, certainly. But yeah. Okay. So you're always going to have that fight. Somebody's
I mean, I don't know why.
What good is determining who
let me not get sidetracked with stupid stuff.
All right.
And go back to what's happening. So Trump is meeting with these two Michigan legislators tomorrow.
Okay. Is there just two?
Well, it's the two leaders of the two houses.
I guess. I'm sure that's at least who's going. I wondered whether there were other people.
And just last
along.
week they both said that we can't do that. That's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So right, and as I was thinking about it at the beginning of the show,
told. I didn't exactly read it the same way, but it's what are you talking about? Stop being a doomsayer.
Yes,
they said they wouldn't do it. My quippy response at the time was, Lindsey Graham said he'd never approve a Supreme Court justice in election years. How'd that work out for you?
Yeah. That's true. And as a matter of fact, all the people who said who also objected and even voted no, they got leave to vote no, have since then, they're approving more judges. The election is over. Donald Trump lost it, and there's no reason in the world for him to be naming federal judges, and they're still doing it left and right. They just
just to put a point on that. No other president who lost re-election has had justices confirmed. None.
Justices, judges at all? Any sort of?
No. None.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. It would be
aren't that
ridiculous.
Many of them? There's only 4 or 5 who lost re-election, but they didn't get any.
Right. I guess so.
Well, they didn't even think to get any. Everybody said, well, the people have spoken. This is a transition period.
Right.
We'll do what we have to do. But, this is a new Republican tradition. When you lose, you change all the rules in the lame duck. Like Wisconsin did the Republicans in Wisconsin, the Republicans in North Carolina, they tried to strip the governors of power. And, North Carolina, it didn't work because there was a Democratic-controlled Supreme Court that struck most of it down. But in Wisconsin, it was the opposite. It was a Republican-controlled court, and they held it all up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did they do something with Georgia? I don't know. If you can keep an eye out for the Georgia situation, that would be
well.
Oh, it does. Votes to be certified tomorrow. So apparently they did. I don't know if you could look up the result, or we'll wait till the next break to take a look.
Okay. Well, that is coming. I'll see where they're at. Well, I'll take it. So Georgia, you think has certified?
Just by my muted, looking at the little chyrons on MSNBC, because I have the sound off, obviously.
Okay.
It says Georgia completes a recount, vote to be certified tomorrow. Now, they don't say that Biden won, but I'm assuming that's what they mean.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to see. Georgia. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not finding anything that's clearly...
All right, so maybe they just announced they completed, but they didn't announce the results.
All right,
oh,
well,
God.
We'll check in the next
so they're going to keep us in pins and needles for another day. I thought they were going to say what the result was. Oh, my God.
They may yet.
By the time people hear this, everyone will know what the result is.
Right, oh, yeah, but this was our agony
but you get
at the
to
time.
Be entertained by my anxiety about not knowing.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, so the judges, by the way, I don't know much about them other than that they're probably horrible. And I happened to see that one of them was 33 years old.
Yeah, they're bad. There's
Fantastic.
actually one who I know from Puerto Rico named Laureus Marswatch who's been nominated to sit on the First Circuit Court of Appeals, though I don't think there's going to be enough time. He was just nominated by Trump after the election.
Nominated after. That's something. Okay.
Right. So he's nominated after. I don't know that McConnell has enough time. Plus, pretty soon, I think McSally left. So, they're down to, 52. And what's his name? Kelly comes on, I would think, next week. Right. Because his election will be certified by the 30th. So I think he would be. No, that's not next week, is it? But McSally said she's gone and she's not coming back. She said goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, well, no surprise there. There's not much for her to do. But, maybe that'll stop the voting.
Some judges.
Yeah, I guess. Boy, she's just depressed. So she took off. Right, and so nobody I'll have to check on that. I guess that's probably the case. I would imagine just politically people would stop nominating judges normally. I guess,
Well,
John Adams
I read. You don't take it to the bank, but... I mean, if you go back,
but those were magistrates.
You had who lost recently on a re-election. You're talking about Bush 41, Jimmy Carter. Do you want to count Gerald Ford? I guess.
Yeah, no, that really would have been some weak positioning for him to be nominated. If you go all the way back, there's John Adams who nominated the Midnight Judges of Marbury versus Madison.
What he did.
What happened to that guy?
That was the first court packing.
Yeah.
Jefferson repacked the court afterwards.
So, you're just going to get yourself into trouble that way. All right, let's take a 1-minute break. We'll see if we can find anything out about what happened in Georgia. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And we've got news. We looked it up. You already know the news because it's tomorrow for you, but it's now for us. And what? What happened? Georgia finished its count?
Georgia, I don't have the exact number, but they said the difference was minuscule from the original results.
Okay.
And that Joe Biden will be certified as the winner of Georgia tomorrow.
Okay, that is good news.
That's a huge deal to close doors for Trump. I mean, again, I don't see Wisconsin being in play, but depending on how you feel about that, now he'd have to take Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona.
Okay.
I believe. I mean, I know they're challenging Nevada, but Nevada's all Democratic, so I don't.
Okay, not as
really
much of a problem. I see Mark Elias tweeting that in the meantime, Georgia federal courts have rejected the Republican effort to block certification. So no remaining lawsuits currently pending in Georgia. That brings Trump and allies to a whopping 1-32 record in post-election litigation.
Interesting fact about that judge in Georgia, the federal judge in Georgia, he was a Trump appointee. But he might have been, he's a district court judge. You remember, those are often rewarded to more establishment types, not the necessarily Federalist. The Federalist Society guys don't want to be on the district court. They want to be in the appellate court.
That's true. Good point. Yeah.
So you still have district courts for normal people. It might have been Georgia has a pretty powerful legal community. They like to think they're good lawyers and whatnot. So they probably got some, straightforward, normal Bush type Republican, and he didn't want any part of this. So he threw it out.
All right.
I mean, I doubt there was any plausible claim anyway, but look at the Eighth Circuit where the Federalist Society guys are on it. When they did that, they gave the guy Trump electors in Wisconsin standing to challenge a Wisconsin election law, and ruled against the Secretary of State for Wisconsin's rule on acceptance of absentee ballots. Interestingly, I was talking to somebody about this on Twitter today. The Trump team cited that same standing decision in the Eighth Circuit to the Third Circuit, and like this Reagan judge and this Bush 41 judge and this Bush 43 judge all said, in between lines, that's the craziest decision we ever heard. We're not following that.
Okay. short-lived.
So they really have nowhere to go in Pennsylvania either. I mean, I don't know why I get nervous about it, but I just feel like Georgia being called is a big deal.
Okay. Well, everyone that gets locked down, in some fashion, even though, you can say whatever you want about these things, or I guess try any. When you're talking about a coup, I guess you could do anything you like. The rules are obviously out the window, but it's good to see
certification's
evidence.
a big deal in the whole scheme of things, because then you have ascertained the winner by the law of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to put you in the safe harbor position under 3 USC 5, and the certification will be done. And, whatever the legislature does at that point, the certified slates under law is going to be superior. In theory, if it's turned in time, the Congress can't even object to it. So at this point, Georgia will be beyond objection in Congress as it's going.
Yes. Although, again, I suppose if you're just looking to make trouble or delay things or screw things up, somebody did ask me about objections that are made to the certificates for the electoral vote counts on the day that they're counted in the joint session. Actually, the question, was a very specific question. They're asking, does it can more than one member make this objection? Not just that they could join in the objection, but can they rise to speak to their objection? In other words, and then just drone on and on and on.
No.
And I don't know.
I mean, you answered.
Is that right?
Question, I'm sure. No, you have to put it in writing.
Yes, that's true. It does have to be submitted in writing.
And it's supposed to be a fairly concise writing, and it needs to be joined by, as you know, a senator. And if it is, then they go into their respective caucuses and decide what they're going to do.
Right. And I think they do so immediately. Now, the way to game that, I guess, would be, you may remember from having seen either watching the movie or seeing the scene on C-SPAN. Right. There were a number of different House members. They all rose to make the objection. And so that can go on for some time. But their big problem was that there was no senator had joined in the complaint. Now, I guess if you wanted to game it out, right, you get, if you get a senator, you get your 25 House members together, or however many you got, and you say, all right, we have a senator, but there's 100 of us that are going to object. 1 through 99 say no, there's no senator. And then the 100th guy will say, yes, I do have a senator. So we can waste half a day before we actually adjourn to have the votes.
That's what they're going to do.
Okay.
You're right. Jim Jordan, then Devin Nunes, then Louis Gohmert, then, the crazy QAnon woman.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got 100 of those. So
True.
You know what? That's exactly what's going to happen on January 6th.
That may be it. Now, individually, they can't waste a great deal of time, although
But
Pence...
times 100.
Yeah, that's true. And, of course, I mean... you'll recall that the scene in 2000 was, of course, it was Democrats and a Democratic vice president presiding, but the vice president was hostile to the effort going on the floor. If it's Pence and a bunch of loons and they start, speechifying about this, you're not supposed to, and they're supposed to be gavelled down quickly and say, look, the only question is, has a senator joined? And no more speechifying. Is there a senator? But if the vice president says, I might not gavel this guy, there'll be people yelling from the floor, regular order, regular order. And if Pence lets them go on for 5 minutes apiece, I don't know why he would. He'd be very bored. But if they figure out some reason to think, we're going to do this from January 6th to January 20th, we're just going to keep doing it to give ourselves as much opportunity to, come up with a second plan as possible. I guess they could do that, and Pence wouldn't have to necessarily be right up on top of them. And then, if every single one of them objects, and then the last one says, yes, I do have a senator, then, why didn't you say so in the first place? Because we wanted to screw with you.
Yep, and they will do that. They want to make their speeches. It's going to be a circus. First of all, Trump will keep going till at least that day.
If he can.
He's not going to stop.
No.
And he's going to pressure these guys to not stop either. And most of them don't want to stop. The Jim Jordans of the world, and the Devin Nuneses, and
they'll
all these
enjoy
people.
it. Trump will love it. He'll be important until the 20th. You know, he's not really important now, except for the fact that he makes such trouble and everybody focuses on him because I can't look away.
Well, he's threatening a coup. I mean,
yeah,
and it's
right.
looking, less likely, but it's still happening. Plus, of course, he's shut Biden out of his transition.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I assume, I know they've been trying to downplay it, and that's okay. But at some point, if the certifications come in, there just is no plausible reason. I think they have to sue and get an order to force her to issue the ascertainment.
And they might be able to make that work if states are announcing, look, we've certified. I mean, the only argument you could make is, well, we're waiting for them to come in the mail. No. Some judge, I guess, some crazy judge could say, yeah, I want to see show me the certificates.
Well, let me tell you one thing about Georgia that still is out there. The certification isn't official till tomorrow.
Why not?
The district court issued its opinion this afternoon. I assume there will be an emergency appeal to the 11th Circuit. And there are a lot of very Trumpy judges on the 11th Circuit. You get the right panel, and they could very well issue a TRO blocking certification until they hear the case. Blah, blah, blah.
I guess that could happen, and that's, is that the reason that they said we'll announce tomorrow, or is it statutory date?
Statutory date that they announced on November 30th.
Okay. November 30th.
Not November
20th.
30th, tomorrow.
Okay.
Whatever date. Is that the 20th? Yes.
20th. All right. So
yeah, they're tomorrow. Michigan,
not necessarily.
And I believe Pennsylvania are Monday.
Okay. Yeah, I guess everybody by December 1st, everybody's done, I think, with their certifications. But each state has a different.
The problem with their Georgia case is there's literally nothing to argue. Trump can ask for a recount, but it's a machine recount.
Okay.
And they just did a hand recount of the whole thing, so it's kind of stupid.
No.
But all right, he can delay.
Turn those machines
delay.
back
The certification happens, and then he gets to ask for a recount. Right.
Okay,
so
yes.
He has to do it within 2 business days. So he'll have till Tuesday to ask for a recount. Which again, it's going to be a machine recount, so it's nothing. They're just going to run the ballots through again, and they just checked each of them, and there was minuscule differences. A few hundred votes apparently. I don't know what you can never tell what judges are going to do, especially Trump judges, especially Trump circuit judges.
To hell with it.
So it's I still think it's possible that you'll get an order tonight that will stop the certification, and that actually delays when Trump has the time for Trump to ask for a recount.
Yeah, but if it doesn't matter much anyway, I guess that having explained that the recount will be a machine recount, and that's unlikely to change anything.
And it gets done in a day or two.
Right. So what the hell? I'm not that worried about getting the recount. Let's just have the temporary restraining order, and then we'll say, see, I told you there was something wrong with it. And the judge may or may not, but judges will say it's just a routine thing. But, it wouldn't be that hard to get two judges together on a panel who say, well, since we know ultimately there's no harm done, if we feel like we owe something to Trump about it or the Republican machine that put us here, fine.
Well, Trump doesn't actually. The interesting thing is Trump isn't even. It's not even Trump's case. It's this guy named Lynn Wood, who you may have heard of.
Yes.
He's kind of a crazy lawyer. He represented Sandman and Nicholas Sandman, the kid from Cincinnati, little jerk kid, who sued everybody for defamation. And he didn't have standing. He's a voter in Georgia, but that doesn't give you standing. That's pretty settled law. Voter. He got to vote. So whatever happened, his vote wasn't denied. That's really the problem that's been with Trump stuff, including like in Pennsylvania. and the case in Williamsport, the federal case, which should be decided tomorrow, I would assume, with a dismissal. And in that case, instead of suing the counties that didn't allow cures and had absentee ballots discarded, which would have been the remedy if you're as an equal protection matter. So shouldn't you be asking me to tell the counties that didn't allow the cure of the absentee ballot failure to order them to let them and then count those votes? Isn't that the proper remedy that you should be asking? No, I don't want to add votes. I want to take votes away. But that's not what the law is supposed to do. So, it does what it does.
Yeah, right. And let's see, was it which well, it was the Wisconsin case, I think, right, where they the request is for recounts, but only in certain counties, very heavily.
Yeah, it's
black
two counties.
Yeah.
They have the recount. Listen, they did this for money. I mean, they saved $5 million by not doing a statewide recount, right?
Yeah, I guess so. You're right.
But they left 2/3 of the votes unrecounted. Now, look, you can think what you want about Milwaukee. They're not going to throw out the votes, or in Dane, which is Madison. They're not going to throw out the votes. But there might have been errors, let's say, 100 here, 100 there. I mean, you got to get to 20,000, so it was a long shot anyway. But when you exclude 2/3 of the vote, your chances of catching up on a recount are zero.
Yes.
You need them all recounted.
They just thought that they would target these things because I guess they want the story of, well, look, I told you these Democratic-run districts are corrupt, and see, here there were 11 votes that got counted wrong. That's crazy.
All right, so throw them out.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, at the end of the day, you get your remedy and you reduce the margin by 100 or whatever number it might be. I actually think it'll probably be the reverse. I think Biden will probably get more votes than.
Well, that would be fun.
Than Trump. I mean, because
yeah, it's likely.
It's
if you missed anything.
There's data. Unfortunately, we are not very efficient at voting. We often color over the line. Sometimes we overvote. We put little marks on the things, and we're more likely to get our votes rejected by the way we fill out our ballots than Republicans.
Okay.
So the reality is, Biden's probably going to gain
most likely
50, 100, 150 votes when it's all said and done.
That would be something. I was thinking about just the nature of the way they built the suit, and I did see somebody commenting today. I remember when Republicans said it wasn't cool at all to recount only a couple.
Right. Well, that was Bush v. Gore. Of course. Yes, that was the equal protection argument.
Yes, but screw that, because we only have X million dollars to spend on this thing. We can't pay for the whole state.
Well, so. I mean, honestly, if you believe that Bush v. Gore is correct, and it wasn't, the reality is that Wisconsin shouldn't allow a partial recount unless, for the presidency, it should ask for a full recount.
I guess
it should require it. I mean, if Bush v. Gore means anything, this partial recount is improper.
Yeah, well, maybe they've pocketed that, right? So they'll have their recount, and then they'll say, hey, we just realized that's improper, and we should do it again, the whole state this time. But P.S., we shouldn't have to pay for it. It's not our fault.
You have to ask for whatever recount you're going to have. Yesterday was you can't ask for a different one. If this one,
unless you yell. In which case?
Well, you can say a lot of things, but that you can't change the law because that would violate Article 2, Section 1. The Blacker case.
No. Who cares about that?
Apparently nobody now, but before they cared a lot.
Okay. I'm trying to sort of survey the map here. Like, I guess we can make quick work of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers thing. I did find that rather interesting. That how poorly they understand voting.
Michigan election law, but just common sense. Looking at the law, when you are sitting as a board is when you have power as a board member. It doesn't happen outside of that context, right?
I would guess.
So when they were
rescission.
sitting as a member of a board that was convened,
Yeah.
they voted to certify.
It's right here on paper. It says you voted yes.
Yeah, it's there, and
right.
it was submitted to the state canvassing board. So whatever you write in an affidavit the next day, you're not speaking as a board member at that point. You only speak as a board member when you're sitting as a board. It's like any other board. You don't walk around being a board member. You're a board member, but your powers as a board member only.
Right. You're one of a very few number of people entitled to cast a vote when a board convenes.
Right. It is so different than, say, a member of Congress. A member of Congress, has influence because he's a member of Congress, and he can make calls, and people will take his call, and they'll tell him what's going on.
Sure.
But it's only when they're sitting as a congressman or congressperson that they have the powers of a congressperson. That's to vote, to chair a committee, and in fact, even as a committee chair, sitting on a committee, it's only when the committee's convened that you have that power, right?
Yeah, well, I guess so, yeah.
As a formal matter.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable conclusion to draw from it. That's an interesting way of dismissing that. I was wondering, okay, will they find somebody sympathetic to the idea of, sure, I voted this way, but I didn't mean that. And being that there's only two of us here, it's pretty easy to ascertain the actual intent of the voter by having a hearing about it. So what do you say, even though that's not the way we usually do votes?
Okay,
for anything.
The voter, let's run the tape. All in favor say aye. Aye. You said
but I didn't.
Aye. Did you mean nay?
Yes. I mean no.
Okay, well, let me run the tape forward a little bit more.
Yeah.
The Democratic member said, is there any, I'll put forth now, does anyone want to reconsider their vote? No. No.
I thought they meant not want to reconsider. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, right. So nothing much comes of that. It was just, certainly it was annoying, but maybe nothing else for that. I mean, I only mention it because I want to remind everybody how crazy Trumpsters and Trump judges are. It makes no difference normally. I guess if you run into somebody who says, to hell with everything, I'll throw it out, then somebody on an appeals court will say, no, you can't. But then the weirdest Trumpers are on those appeals courts.
Yes,
I
mean, but the thing about the situation we're talking about, there's no court yet. It went to the state canvassing board, and that's actually where Trump is going to focus his attention. He's trying to get no certification, right? So there's two. I don't know why Michigan does it this way, but whatever. They have two Republicans and two Democrats on all the canvassing boards in the various counties and at the state level, right? Mm-hmm. And the plan would be to deadlock the state canvassing board so there's not a certification. Now, I've asked people who know more than I do, well, what happens if the state canvassing board doesn't certify? There obviously should be a remedy. One of the remedies is the governor can replace the members of the canvassing board. It has to be a Republican, I think, by law, but there must be there's some Republicans out there that she could count on to vote to certify, presumably, and she would pick them, and they would then certify.
All right.
Now, or alternatively, apparently, you could go to court, and the court can order them to certify. But depending on which judge you get, I suppose. So I would actually think Whitmer would probably just replace one of the Republicans and get a 3-1 vote on it. One would think.
I hope so. Okay, so that I think that takes care of that outstanding issue. And elsewhere,
Pennsylvania, they got to win a court case because the law is really they're hamstrung. The Pennsylvania legislature has no power on determinations of certifications of elections. It's all been invested in the executive. The Secretary of State does the certification. The governor of the state in Pennsylvania sends in the slate of electors by law. That's the manner prescribed by the legislature of Pennsylvania. So any departure from that would be a violation of Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution that we've talked about before. So really, they're hamstrung. They need a court. And it won't be the Pennsylvania Supreme Court because that's got a 5-2 Democratic advantage. So it'd have to be some kind of federal court. But their problem there is, first of all, they haven't run into a Trump judge in Pennsylvania yet that's even entertained it. But their problem even bigger than that is there's already Third Circuit opinions on standing that basically means all these cases lack standing. So, then it would have to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would have to overrule somehow. I don't know how they would do that, and I don't know that they would, because even then, if everything else, unless something else falls into place, that's not enough for Trump. They're not going to do it unless they can throw the election to Trump. They won't do it just for the hell to do it, in my opinion.
Yes,
so
it could
they'd
even
have to
surprise
find a judge
you.
in Arizona that's going to do it as well.
All right, so at least we understand kind of what odds stand in the way. But yeah,
right. So you can do the math. You have a cushion of 36 electoral votes right now. If Georgia holds up, that's off the table. If Wisconsin holds up, that's also off the table. And if Michigan holds up, that's also off the table. So there's not enough at that point.
Mm-hmm.
There's only Michigan and Arizona, and there's 11 electoral votes in Arizona plus 20 in Pennsylvania. It's only 31. It's not enough. He needs, unless he gets, he needs 3 states out of those 5.
Yeah, I guess. Okay.
Of those 4. Unless Wisconsin comes back into play, which would be 3 out of 5. But he'd have to get the right 3 for it. So, look, it's a long shot. It's definitely probably not going to happen.
Yes.
But it's scary that it's not 100%.
Yeah.
That it's not going to happen.
And all right, so a lot of mischief to be made along the way, and I guess there's not much call for the mischief in the joint session in January unless any of these things actually happens. But
look, if they follow the law,
then
you're going to have enough certified and safe harbor electoral votes that they can't be challenged. But what if they decide, I don't care what 3 U.S.C. 5 says, which we've talked about before.
That's possible.
What court do I go to? So there's still that. At the very least, it's going to be chaos and nastiness. And January 6th is absolutely going to be
really be a
carnival of immense proportions.
It would be. So I guess I recommend taking a look, finding some time during the day to peek in on the proceedings. Although I guess Twitter will notify you. As soon as Louis Gohmert stands up and says, I don't care what the law says, this just ain't right. I don't know.
He'll say more than that. This election was stolen. They had that server in Germany. Hugo Chavez.
I don't know how you back down from that claim.
That's just Louis Gohmert. There's Marjorie Greene. There's Andy Biggs. There's the Jordan, obviously, Nunes. They're all going to be crazy.
Yeah.
There's going to be 100 crazy outbursts that day.
Yeah.
It's going to be a disgrace.
It could be a real crazy spectacle.
I don't even know if the ULI guy's still there. He could be up there and yell ULI all day.
That's a good question. I don't know. Is he in? I'm going to look that up. What was he? Just Joe Wilson? Is that what?
Joe Wilson or something like that, right?
Yeah, I have a feeling like he's gone, but
I think he's gone too. We haven't heard much from him, but I don't know if he got beat. I doubt he got beat. He probably retired or something.
No, maybe he's still there. Oh my gosh, let me take a look at this here. Is this Wikipedia?
I don't even know all of them, but
right, I've lost track.
All the crazies. I know some of them. I knew
Biggs.
Biggs.
I think he's still there. There's a thing here on my search page. Is Joe Wilson still a congressman? One of the people ask this question when you're on the Google page, and I think so. Still representing South Carolina's 2nd district. So congratulations,
well,
folks.
Then he'll go crazy too, and then
True.
I guess who's back in the Congress at least for a term.
Yeah.
Daryl is.
Right. He'll be like, I'm not going to give up my my number 1 California perch to this Devin Nunes clown. I'm taking it back. So, entirely
David,
possible.
I'm actually going to have to run on
Sure
you now.
thing. No problem.
You got enough material?
Yeah, sure. I think that'll be fine. I appreciate you coming by. I'm surprised that I was able to steal this much time from you. Thanks, Armando.
All right, thanks a lot.
Take care. And we'll be right back in 2 minutes without Armando. There's plenty to do. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. And did we get all that word out? Did I say Kagro in the Morning? That's very old-timey of me. Kagro in the Morning, the way we usually refer to it. Okay, and Armando has had to run. Of course, it was, in fact, evening when we recorded, and I'd want to run, too. But that does give us one more segment with which we can either turn back to the reading that we began yesterday. Can America restore the rule of law without prosecuting Trump? Big question. Or some of the other pending stories. I did want to get back and just, well, you know what? By now, I guess, it being Friday and all, you probably have heard the story. The other one I was thinking about spending some time on, the disturbing new details that have been alleged in the plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. ABC offering up the report that I happened to grab. But yeah, if you haven't heard about it by now, I guess just put that up alongside the shenanigans going on in Michigan and the Republican legislative leaders coming to Washington to actually entertain a meeting with the president to take on this mission of trying to gum up the works from Michigan. And I guess that too, alongside with, even though we straightened out, I think, what ends up happening with the Board of Canvassers, just a reminder that apparently the president was personally in touch with the two members of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers after their vote, and whatever got said, and I imagine, I don't know whether he went with the excoriation until you go back and file the affidavit, or sweet talk them into filing the affidavit. I don't know what he thinks works best, but a lot of people insisting that that was a pretty serious violation of statute, although I'm not exactly familiar with what they'd be, what statute they'd be pointing at here. But I mean, I assume that you're certainly not supposed to be able to bribe or otherwise unduly influence members of the Board of Canvassers. And I don't know whether it's just an assumption that he did that, or maybe he spoke to them so reasonably that they saw the error of their ways. I don't know if that's illegal in particular. Anyway, but all of the things happening in Michigan, really, at this point, it's hard to believe that anything is out of the question. So these guys, anyway, that they picked up for their plot to kidnap the governor, apparently also had a plan B. So new court filings say that these 14 men charged in this plot had a plan B in which the plotters would have taken over the Michigan Capitol building with 200 armed combatants. I don't know if they had any real ability to call up that many co-conspirators, but that was the thought, and that they were, I guess, planning for a week-long series of televised executions of public officials. That's what the papers say. And apparently there was also a plan C on top of that, which I imagine they would have had to revert to that pretty quickly, because I don't know how you get past the first televised execution of a public official without having, the rain brought down on you. But I guess that's what Plan C was about: burning down the State House, leaving no survivors, doing a David Koresh exit there. And I imagine it would have escalated to that pretty quickly if they had tried to execute Plan B that involved the executions. No pun intended there. Not really a punny sort of topic. Anyway, let's see. Maybe time is best spent taking a look back at that question of what are we going to do with this most criminal president ever, now that supposedly he isn't going to be a sitting president anymore, and we've all been promised that this was the time during which we might be able to indict him. That's a good question. Let me see if I can't pick up the article back where we left off. Do I remember even where we left off? Let's see. We know we had discussed George H.W. Bush's pardon of the 6 Reagan White House officials, and noting that in this case this was Bush sparing members of his own party, that Obama had created perhaps a more relevant precedent for Biden in choosing not to prosecute members of the George W. Bush administration who had authorized unlawful torture of detainees, right? And that Eric Holder, his own attorney general, had used the same phrase, criminalization of policy differences, when the issue came up during the 2009 congressional hearing. Let's see, over the summer, right, I asked David Cole, National Legal Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, what he thought would happen to Trump if he lost the election, and his gut feeling was, very unlikely to see a federal prosecution on that. It was a sentiment that I heard from a lot of legal thinkers and former government officials in the months leading up to the election. The visions of Donald Trump in an orange jumpsuit were more fantasy than reality. His true moment of reckoning would happen at the ballot box, maybe. But the election has now come and gone. It's an overstatement at this point. And Trump, along with most of his party and millions of Americans, has refused to accept the results. And accountability maybe feels like more distant than ever. The stakes of an indictment, this is where we'll pick up, would be very high. The commander-in-chief's broad powers under the Constitution could make it difficult to secure convictions. The damage to democracy that would be caused by a failed prosecution of a former president is hard to even fathom. An acquittal could also set back future efforts at accountability, I don't know how much more than not doing anything, and embolden aspiring abusers of authority. Even once he's out of office, Trump is going to be a powerful force in the country's political life. Putting him on trial for his conduct as president would be tantamount to putting on trial the more than 72 million Americans who voted for his reelection. I get the point, but one institution that Biden will no doubt be focused on trying to rebuild is the Justice Department. Prosecuting Trump could complicate any effort to restore the agency's reputation for independence and integrity. There are logistical issues, too. Prosecuting a former president could mean convicting him, and the idea of sending a former president to prison does seem fantastical. And, of course, it seems fantastical because we've never had such a obvious criminal in the office before. I guess I will just comment here. It probably depends what you're trying him for. What are you prosecuting him for? And if you're prosecuting him over, this is the real drawback of this thing. I mean, there's a great point to this article. If you prosecuted him for the damage that he was doing to our democracy and talking about, even down at the brass tacks level, well, okay, there's no crime against democracy that you can be charged with. But whether it's meddling with these state or county boards of canvassers or emoluments clause violations, for that matter, or any of the really top level things, Hatch Act wouldn't be something necessarily that I'd be. Yeah, you could get him on. I don't know whether it carries any prison terms, probably some fines, but most of the stuff for which we would really think about wanting to put him on trial, it would be a stretch to try and bring it down to the level of a real statutory violation. But I think maybe more likely acceptable to a larger portion of the country would be if you're really charging him with as a common criminal for his tax evasions, for his frauds. And I guess you could take the emoluments route on that one too, because it's just so easily understandable as outright bribery. But if you're, I don't know, you get your diehard moment there, right? You're nothing but a common thief. And he would argue with you. He's an extraordinary thief, but something that comes, look, there'll be a lot of Trump supporters that you can argue with about this and say, well, look, you understand. You were arrested for this too, right? Writing bad checks or bank fraud or insurance fraud. Don't tell me you don't know exactly what happened here. And, not that they would admit it to you, but I guess maybe if there is such a thing as deep down inside them, they would be able to tell the difference. All right. Where do we leave off here? Right. Okay. So if history is any guide, the desire to move on, and there is a whole organization named Move On, ironically enough, and they were for moving on the other side. Why not this one? If the desire to move on will only grow stronger in the weeks and months ahead, if history is any guide anyway. But how does the country move on from a president whose disregard for the law has been so constant and pervasive? Every president seeks to exploit the immense power of office, but Trump's exploitation of this power, represented a difference in both degree and kind. This is true. Never before had a president leveraged so much of the energy of the executive branch, Alexander Hamilton's word there, energy, to advance his personal interests. Presidents Reagan and George W. Bush stretched the limits of their authority in the name of national security. Trump stretched the limits of his authority not just to enrich himself and his family, but to block investigations into his personal and official conduct and to maintain his grip on power. Trump's conduct as president was a product of his unique character, but it was also enabled by the office. The accumulation of decades worth of lawmaking, legal theorizing, and historical precedent has given the president almost total freedom from accountability, rendering useless any seemingly applicable tool of law enforcement. Under the special counsel regulations, the independent prosecutor was charged with investigating the Trump campaign's links to Russia, effectively served at the pleasure of the Trump administration. The federal prosecutors who indicted Michael Cohen for an illegal campaign finance scheme were bound to respect the decades-old legal opinion from the Justice Department asserting that the president, who, according to Cohen, directed him to carry out the scheme, was immune from criminal prosecution. There was nothing and no one to stop Trump from ordering numerous officials not to cooperate with his impeachment inquiry. None of this not that this mattered. Trump's acquittal by the GOP-controlled Senate was a foregone conclusion before the hearings even opened. One after another, Trump's close associates faced charges for actions committed on his behalf, even as he walked through still more open doors, confident that as long as he remained in office, he was untouchable. It would be wrong to think about Trump's behavior as existing on the same spectrum as that of his post-Watergate predecessors. To see why, you have to first look back on the entire Trump presidency in a different way, one that sees his possibly criminal conduct not as a byproduct of the pursuit of a political agenda, right? Criminalizing politics, that's totally different. Well, not really, but it's thought to be different. But again, one that sees his possible criminal conduct not as a byproduct of the pursuit of a political agenda, but as a central, self-perpetuating feature of his tenure. In this light, Trump's potential criminality becomes a kind of through line. The dots that connect his life as a businessman to his entry into politics and then onward across his 4 years as president. One potentially illegal act led Trump to the next. From his law-bending moves as a businessman to his questionable campaign finance practices to his willingness to interfere with investigations into his conduct, to his acts of public corruption, and finally to the seemingly illegal abuse of the powers of his office in order to remain in office. The stakes of prosecuting Donald Trump may be high, but so are the costs of not prosecuting him, which would send a dangerous message, one that transcends even the presidency, about the country's commitment to the rule of law. Trump has presented Biden, and America really, with a very difficult dilemma. This whole presidency has been about someone who thought he was above the law. Ann Milgram, the former Attorney General of New Jersey, told me, if he isn't held accountable for possible crimes, then he literally was above the law. So now we turn, I guess, to the different kinds of crimes for which he might be charged. And the first one here is financial crimes, and that might be the one you get away with. Let's see what they have to say about this one. Donald Trump's singular relationship with the law, which long predated his presidency, was perhaps an inevitable consequence of his relationship with Roy Cohn during his formative years in business. It was Cohn who taught Trump that the law was not a set of inviolable rules, but a system to beat and even work to your advantage. The most powerful tool in a businessman's toolbox. I decided long ago to make my own rules, Cohn told Penthouse magazine in 1981 for some reason. Trump later passed along one of those rules to his first White House counsel, Donald McGahn, when he told them, lawyers don't take notes. Not on a criminal conspiracy, as you might say if you're a fan of The Wire. Anyway, as a businessman with an inherited and growing fortune, Trump engaged in a great deal of litigation. I'm like a PhD in litigation, who's now 1 in 32 post-election, but okay. This is something he joked at one campaign rally in 2016, answering suits with countersuits, wearing down his adversaries with endless rounds of delays, motions, and appeals, compelling his employees to sign sweeping non-disclosure agreements. At risk of defaulting on a $640 million loan from Deutsche Bank in 2008, Trump sued the bank itself for $3 billion, blaming it for helping cause the global financial meltdown that had made him temporarily insolvent. Unhappy with the $15 million property tax valuation placed on a golf course that he had paid $47.5 million to buy and renovate, Trump sued the town of, is it Ossining? Yeah, I don't know. New York, claiming the property was worth only $1.4 million. And I don't really know why that would be. Oh, yeah, so probably for a lower property tax. Pretty amazing. So again, recapping it, he paid $47.5 million for it, then renovated it. And they said, okay, fine, your property's worth $15 million. Now pay your taxes. And he says, no, it's only worth $1.4 million. Wow. Trump had figured out something about the American system. You could solve a lot of problems with money, lawyers, and a willingness to double down. This attitude led him inexorably toward business practices that tested the line of legality. After Trump's financial struggles in the early 2000s made it more difficult for him to borrow money from established financial institutions, he sought partnerships with private individuals like the Russian oligarch Aras Agalarov, whom Senate investigators have linked to organized crime. A spokesman for the Trump Organization challenged the notion that the company was struggling at the time and said that, in fact, it enjoyed great success in the 2000s. Sure, whatever. Trump's real estate training program, Trump University, was essentially a pyramid scheme, encouraging consumers, and particularly the elderly, to purchase high-priced seminars for supposedly proprietary investment advice that, in fact, came from a third-party marketing company. Trump used money raised by his businesses, as well as to buy he used money raised by his nonprofit foundation to settle lawsuits against his for-profit businesses, as well as to buy gigantic paintings of himself, which he had hung at one of his golf clubs. According to the congressional testimony of Trump's longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, again in this, Trump deliberately inflated the value of his assets by hundreds of millions of dollars in order to secure bank loans and cheaper insurance rates, and deflated their value to lower his tax burden. A spokesman for the Trump Organization said Cohen's claims were completely untrue, but they're not. Trump's tax strategy enabled by a large team of accountants and lawyers, stretched the limits of tax avoidance and may well have crossed the line into tax fraud. Trump has steadfastly refused to disclose his tax returns, but a team of investigative reporters at the Times obtained reams of his tax data. What they revealed was startling. In 2010, Trump took a $72.9 million tax refund for an abandoned Atlantic City casino venture, which would require him to have received absolutely nothing in return for his investment, and he appears to have grossly overstated the value of several properties in order to claim larger deductions known as conservation easements. We did discuss those, I think. During Trump's years on The Apprentice, he wrote off $70,000 in haircuts as a business expense. He also wrote off the expenses associated with a family compound in Westchester County by classifying it as an investment property, and he paid his daughter Ivanka more than $740,000 in consulting fees when she was already an employee of the Trump Organization. Most major financial crimes carry a 5-year statute of limitations, so any illegal acts committed since 2015 would be chargeable. Both the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who entered office in 2019, vowing to use every area of the law to investigate President Trump, and the Manhattan District Attorney, Cy Vance Jr., operate independently of the federal government, and even if Trump were to successfully engineer a pardon for himself, he wouldn't be immune from those state charges. Vance's inquiry appears to cover a range of possible white-collar crimes. One of his office's filings made reference to potentially widespread and protracted criminal conduct at the Trump Organization. Tax fraud and insurance fraud have been mentioned explicitly in court documents, but some of the prosecutors and white-collar defense lawyers I spoke with suggested other possibilities too. Given Trump's history of doing business with foreign actors with a demonstrated need to conceal the sources of their income, another one might be money laundering. If investigators are able to establish that Trump engaged in a pattern of illegal activity, he could also be indicted under New York's racketeering statute. But prosecuting Trump under state law poses challenges of its own. New York state courts afford defendants far more protections than the federal courts. There are stricter rules governing evidence that can be presented to a grand jury, and even minor procedural errors can result in indictments being thrown out. If you're a white-collar defendant, you'd rather be in New York state court than in federal court any day of the week. Daniel R. Alonso, who served as Vance's top deputy from 2010 to 2014 and is now in private practice, told me. Trump could also face federal prosecution for tax fraud, I guess I should emphasize federal prosecution for tax fraud. He is currently in the midst of a protracted audit at the Internal Revenue Service. They believe that, huh? Concerning the casino venture refund. If the agency's auditors find a firm indication of fraud, they can refer the case to the agency's criminal investigators or even to the Department of Justice. A spokesman for the Trump Organization said that all of the company's transactions occurred under the supervision of tax lawyers and followed all applicable provisions of the tax code, but that's what anyone would say. Historically, the IRS has not hesitated to prosecute high-profile figures. It's an efficient way to send a message to the public that there are serious repercussions for committing tax fraud. One of Trump's fellow New York City real estate moguls, Leona Helmsley, served 18 months in federal prison for using corporate funds to renovate her Connecticut mansion. More recently, a former New York City police commissioner, Bernie Kerik, who's still on the Rudy Trump train, admitted to failing to disclose the receipt of a gift from a contractor who renovated his Bronx apartment for free. After pleading guilty to 2 counts of tax fraud and 6 other felonies, he was sentenced to 4 years. Trump, of course, pardoned him last winter, in case you forgot. But cases like these are rare. Wealthy business people are generally able to take extraordinary liberties with their taxes without fear of prosecution. In criminal tax fraud cases, prosecutors are required to prove that the misconduct was intentional, which is a high bar to clear. A jury might agree that Trump's daughter's consulting services were not worth $740,000, but if Trump argued that he thought they were, that could constitute a viable defense. So could ignorance. He's got plenty of that. Trump's large team of accountants gives him cover for many potentially fraudulent claims that might be uncovered in the course of an investigation. The sheer complexity of Trump's finances, The numerous partnerships, limited liability corporations, and shell companies through which he does business would possibly make it difficult to build a case that a jury could follow. Most of the tax lawyers I spoke with said it was much more likely that Trump's IRS audit will remain a civil matter. He could face steep penalties, but he would be spared the prospect of prison. Even if Trump weren't in politics, his celebrity would make him a super appealing prosecutorial target for the IRS, said Daniel Shaviro, a tax professor at NYU Law School. But in the fraught political world we're in, politics will have to be considered. How about a little time for election law violations, too? Let's take a peek. When Donald Trump announced his presidential candidacy, he entered a new realm with new laws to govern his conduct and new forms of potential liability. Fundraising was a challenge for a long shot, anti-establishment candidate, so Trump sought financing through unconventional and, at least in some instances, possibly illegal means. Days before the first Republican nominating caucuses, he used his foundation to host a televised fundraiser for military veterans and then redirected millions of the dollars in donations to his campaign, prompting an investigation by the New York State Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, at the time, of course. The foundation was eventually fined $2 million for the misappropriation of funds and shut down under court supervision. When potentially damaging episodes from Trump's past surfaced or threatened to surface, he shut them down as expeditiously as he could, without apparent concern for legal consequences. After a former contestant on The Apprentice, Summer Zervos, accused Trump of sexual assault, he publicly called her a liar, prompting a defamation suit. His lawyer, then Michael Cohen, arranged for a six-figure hush money payment to be made to two women, Stormy Daniels, of course, and Karen McDougal, who were threatening to go public with their claims of having had affairs with Trump. At the same time, Trump's campaign eagerly embraced Russia's effort to interfere in the election. The campaign's chairman and chief strategist, Paul Manafort, has a long history of carrying out Russian influence operations. He shared internal polling data with the Russian intelligence agent, while another advisor, Roger Stone, helped arrange for WikiLeaks to publish, minutes after the release of the Access Hollywood tape, you remember that one, release a large cache of Democratic Party emails stolen by Russian hackers. Stone, of course, said, no, we don't know where they came from, and I didn't have them hacked out anyway. A number of Trump's campaign associates, including Cohen, Manafort, and Stone, have since faced federal charges and been sentenced to prison. Once Trump is out of office, he could also be investigated and potentially prosecuted for his conduct during the campaign. Robert Mueller, the special counsel, did not find sufficient evidence to prove that Trump's participation in his campaign's involvement with Russia violated the federal conspiracy statute. But the fifth and final volume of the Senate Intelligence Committee's bipartisan report on Russian interference in the election, which was released in August, made it clear that Mueller's investigation was not exhaustive. The Senate report detailed numerous new instances of engagement between the Trump campaign and Russian actors and documented a flurry of conversations between Trump and Stone that investigators suspected involved the imminent DNC email dumps. Still, most of the prosecutors I spoke with thought that the Mueller investigation effectively foreclosed the possibility of a criminal inquiry of Trump's conduct with respect to Russia. People can disagree about how it was done or how it went, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a thorough process, Milgram said. It doesn't feel to me like someone would go digging there to see if there was more. That could feel vindictive because Mueller already made that call. Could be. An election law case against Trump might be more appealing to a Biden Justice Department. It's a possibility. When Cohen pleaded guilty to violating two campaign finance laws in the Southern District of New York, he testified in federal court that... I've lost my place here. But let's get the music started to introduce the end of the show. When Cohen pleaded guilty to violating those campaign finance laws in the SDNY, he testified in federal court that Trump directed him to arrange for the hush money payments. Trump was part of the investigation, but he was protected by the Justice Department policy against indicting a sitting president. He was instead, you'll recall, named an unindicted co-conspirator in the case, Individual One, as the prosecution's filings called him. Well, there's not much disagreement among campaign finance experts about whether Trump could be indicted. The hush money payments to Daniels and McDougal were clearly meant to prevent the disclosure of information that could have damaged his campaign, and as such, they almost certainly violated campaign finance laws, including the prohibition against accepting contributions in excess of $2,700 and the failure to properly report contributions to the FEC. And because the amount of money involved exceeded $25,000, the violations would be considered felonies, each one punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Judging from the facts, it looks like a strong case. There is already material evidence of the scheme. Cohen presented congressional investigators with copies of canceled checks from Trump and the Trump Organization, reimbursements for the payments that he made to Daniels and that the Trump Organization classified as legal fees. So what do you say? Would that be enough for you? Would you accept that? 1 5-year term? 2 5-year terms? Would you need more?
From netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, thanks very much for listening, and there is much more to this if you want to parse through it, if you haven't already. The New York Times Magazine piece on this, much more writing to come on it, much more discussion to come on it as the Trump administration, such that it is, actually wanes and fades away. We'll talk with you about it more on Monday.